Hey, thanks for joining Leanne on Demand today. I want you to think about the last time you got a work email after 8 o'clock. That ping, maybe you got a feeling in your gut. Maybe your phone's in a completely different room and you didn't see it till the next day. But I guess there's a question here, like, do you answer that? So here in Australia, you now have a legal right to ignore that email. But at the same time, so that's a legal right, not just your own personal boundary. At the same time, though, in Australia, we're hearing that our national productivity is in the toilet. And that's not me just saying that. We have the worst productivity levels in 60 years. And so earlier this week on Monday, Petra and I were talking, and my first take on this was really simple. It was a complete clash of ideas. So we have a terrible productivity index, but at the same time, we're bringing in these laws for the right to disconnect. Like, just on the surface, that just seems a little bit in contradiction. But after diving a bit deeper, I didn't realize that the story isn't really a head-on collision of ideas. It's something more complex and interesting, and maybe a fundamental misalignment in how we think about work value and time. Let's talk about the real problem, and it's not just about effort. I think the real reasons our productivity has stalled are really deep and complex. So we're talking about a slump in business investment, in research and development, a skills pipeline that doesn't match the jobs we need. One example of that I heard recently was the number of enrollments in university versus TAFE, trade technical schools, where we need so many more tradies, and it hasn't significantly increased. There's still kind of traditional approach around university, which I think, important for obviously like jobs like lawyers, doctors, engineers, etc. But yeah, the pipeline doesn't match what we actually need in terms of the skills for the future. And there's also a lag in adopting game-changing technology. And I see this all the time with people that I work with, peers even. So when we talk about the right to disconnect, which is a law about after-hours emails or just doing work after hours and being totally responsive, it does force a conversation about one part of the productivity mix, was a culture of burnout and shadow work. That gives us the illusion of productivity, but it actually harms us in the long run. The right to disconnect targets unpaid, unstructured time outside of work, and therefore productivity is measured by the value created during the hours you're actually paid for. So the question is, how do we fix our deep productivity challenges during paid hours so we don't have to lean on the unpaid work that happens after 5 p.m.? I've worked in large organizations. I've done the 40, 50 hour weeks, but just because I was present in an office building for 40 or 50 hours absolutely does not mean I was productive, to be honest. That included useless meetings, conversations with people, which were really great for building relationships, but probably nothing really else, unless there's a bit of collaboration involved. But it's not like I was a robot where I was in there and I was executing on 40, 50 hours of work in that time. And as a business owner myself, I'll start super early in the morning, like 6 a.m., or I'll have a call with Europe. So that forces me to jump on calls at 4 or 5. I'm running a webinar for the US next month, and that starts at 2 o'clock in the morning. That doesn't mean that I'm going to wake up, do that 2 a.m. webinar, and then work all through the day. I get the choice of being flexible. And really, I can do a task in the morning that is a $10,000 task, and damn it, I've won the day. I don't need to sit on there and do admin work or create busyness to fill some allotted time. So a whole definition around being productive and creating value was really interesting. I think it requires like a systemic change in how we operate. And you know what I find really frustrating is, like, when I was in employment, the banks were only open during office hours. And so I'm working office hours too. It's just ridiculous. So when do I go to the bank? Doctor surgeries, physios, they might do a couple of hours after, like they might close at 6 p.m. But it's like, if we're all working office hours, how do we actually use the services of other companies too? And Australia, we are possibly in the worst time zone in the world for being a global market, for having access to the US and Europe as well. You need to get up earlier, you need to work later. And I think time tracking or like being productive during these certain hours is just such an old school approach. It's just terrible mentality. As in, the law that's encouraging that you must work there within these set hours is completely archaic as well. I think there needs to be real conversations between employees and their managers. I do not think it should be regulated at all. So a company like Atlassian, they're leaders in distributed work. Working smarter for them means a heavy reliance on asynchronous tools, so setting like Loom videos or audio notes. And instead of expecting instant replies, their work is documented in Confluence. Their tasks are tracked in Jira, and conversations happen in threads that people can attend to when it suits their workday, which I love. And like, that's why I use Loom a lot, particularly when I'm working with other time zones. Voice notes are really great to do that too. So I'm not constantly having to jump on Zoom calls at random times of the day just to move things forward. I think this law has created a split. Obviously, business founders like myself, well, it's a terrible idea. I think any business owner is the same. Of course, every employee is probably celebrating it, and I get that. I just do think it's probably up to, you might work better in the evening. You might be more of a night owl. I'm more of a morning person, which is why I stagger my day towards the earlier hours, and it suits me really well. I would hate to have it regulated where it's like, Leanne, you work from 9 till 5, and that's it. There needs to be discussion around that. I'm sure Boomer and Gen X managers might privately see this as a fragile policy, where it's all about the days where you stayed until the job was done, no questions asked. Look, I think absolutely, I'm all about having a life first, and work helps support that. It's not the main event. But the fact that we're regulating it when we're in a productivity crisis, just, I think, sends the wrong message. And obviously this hangover from the Industrial Revolution of you do 40 hours, I expect 40 hours of result. We need to define what performance and value is in terms of the output, in terms of the result, not the time invested as well. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Like, what does reasonable look like in your workplace? How is the conversation playing out for you? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.